My Gavanen, and well met once again. I'm Arike Galadirthan, head of Divide and Conquer, and here with the third faction overview, this time for the Northern Dúnedain, the third descendants of Númenor, the third faction who are the descendants of Númenor. As I'm sure you're all aware, the Northern Dúnedain started life as Arnor until they were destroyed sometime in the Third Age. I believe 1980 of the Third Age was the fall of Fornost. And now they are wandering bands of stout defenders who keep the Bree land free from invaders. Unfortunately, they are low in number, and their game reflects that greatly. At the beginning of the game, you start with a mere 2 provinces, and although Amun Sul looks cool and on the battle map it has a unique battle map, unfortunately, as for the mechanics are concerned, it is only a village, so it does not get you very much money, you can't upgrade it, and it will never really be a big recruitment centre, so that really, unfortunately, is not a strong region. However, to compensate for that, Fenestruinen begins the game as a large town. Excuse me, sorry. And that can upgrade as far as the Northern Dúnedain are allowed, which is as far as any faction are allowed, thanks to your Númenorian heritage. You can get all 5 levels of a town and all 3 levels of a castle. So there's no real restrictions on that. Right, so the start of the game for the Northern Dúnedain is, as you can see here, you've got Halbarad lying in wait at the Sarn Ford, the crossing at Ajax Sarn. And you can do what you like with him. Come south and conquer some of the lands of Old Cardolan, or head north and reinforce your forces against the attack on Angmar. You've also got, I can't remember his name, Hervagil in the fort, almost equidistant between Fornost, the old capital of Arthedain, and the city of Numenas, the old capital of Arnor. Both of which are pretty prizes to pick. Fornost, obviously being a castle, is very big on recruitment and units and military, and it's easier to defend, and Numenas being a large city will get you money very quickly. So your choice here is early game, do you want economy or do you want castle? Personally, always vote for the castle, but it's up to each person to decide what you want. Sometimes Bree will beat you to a Numenas. Certainly in 0.5, Bree are very, very strong. We've made some changes, so if you're playing 0.51, you might find that Bree are a lot weaker in the early game, and you might have free reign of some of the regions around here in Old Arthedain. In your actual 2 starting towns, you get Arafor with some Dúnedain Rangers and militia, not particularly strong, but you do get Aragorn with a couple of Dúnedain Rangers. Aragorn gets the Grey Company as his bodyguard, and they are very strong. Very good unit. A solid melee attack of 14, that's an incredible melee attack with the stat system we use. Missile attack of 7, which is an elven quality missile attack, and obviously they're cavalry, so they're very, very mobile. They've also got high accuracy, which is rare for a cavalry archer. So his bodyguard are very, very good. Twinned with the fact that he's one of the best generals in the world, means that Aragorn is a one-man army, and that will certainly come in use later in the game, because the Northern Dúnedain is a struggle to fight. Now, as far as economy is concerned, unfortunately, one of the reasons that Northern Dúnedain are so poor, and another reason why their campaign is quite difficult, is because outside of Fornost and Numenas, almost all the towns, settlements, castles, and cities that you find in Eriador and Old Arnor are all ruined villages, ruined towns, or at most ruined motte and baileys. You will rarely come across a town, or never come across a city outside of Arthedain. And the castles are almost always motte and baileys, which are very small in size. So there's no golden goose in Eriador. There's nowhere that's really going to churn out a ton of money. Numenas and Fornost will eventually get you money, but early game you won't see any sort of reward. You need to get the population into those towns to really get the money. So perhaps one of the best things that you could possibly do is try and push for Tharbad. Because getting regions along the coast will get you ports, and ports are a surefire way of getting money. And Tharbad will also open up trade routes to factions you might not think, such as Dunland and Enedwaith. And trade routes are a very surefire way of earning money. But as I say, there's no real money earner. Numenas and Fornost will be in the late game, but in the early game there's nowhere particularly to take. So really your decisions in the early game are not particularly economical, they are more military. You've got to focus on how you're going to defeat your old enemy, issuing forth from the pits of Carndum in the far north. And that brings us on to early expansion, tied nicely into that. The Northern and the Breeland are surrounded by rebel provinces on almost all fronts. You have a real pick of where you want to go. There's rebel provinces to your north between you and Angmar, covering the whole region of Old Arnor and the borders of Angmar. There's rebel provinces to your west, all the way up to the Lune and the Gulf of the Lune, with Linden and Ered Lune in the north. There are rebel provinces to your south before you meet the clans of Enedwaith here in the region of Erun Vaughan. And there are rebel provinces to your sort of south-easterly direction before you hit Dunland. So you can really expand in any direction that you want, and before you hit any enemies or enemy allies. Only thing you can't obviously do is head west, because this large central chunk here is the Breland and the Shire, who are your allies. So unless you wish to backstab them, you can't really head west. Speaking of enemies and allies, the next thing up on the list is to talk about those indeed. One of your strongest allies, and who will protect you from the Misty Mountains for some time, is the Vale of Imladris, the realm of Imladris. You start just there. Even though Imladris never leave their lands, they do keep the Misty Mountains at check, because the Misty Mountains don't like to walk through Imladris to get anywhere, and they often see that as a target, so they go for them instead of you. So at least you've got some protection from your eastern flank. But with the addition of Anon Enorod in the mountains just here, that may change, as I've not played a Northern Dúnedain campaign since adding that settlement and adding Dol Bryn. So you might find that the Misty Mountains are a lot more aggressive than I suggest. So always be prepared for that. But that goes without, that is of minor relevance really, because Angmar are your real threat. They will hit you so hard and so fast you will wish you played as someone else. They get an auto expansion which brings them quite close to your borders immediately, and because they are an orc faction, they can churn out units as if they were free. So you will face a lot of units very early on. So your key goal here is to try and cripple them as fast as possible, because otherwise you'll have a huge battle on your hands before Ered Luin bother coming down out of their mountains and giving you a hand. So you've got Angmar to your north, you've got the Misty Mountains to your east, and also, however, Dunland and Enedwaith are very aggressive in the south. And if you get very unfortunate and you play a game where they ally together, then you are really in trouble. Often Dunland and Enedwaith go to war against each other, and that keeps Dunland busy, and they make it to Tharbad, and they may cross and take Matraith, which is just here. But often they stay in Tharbad, and they focus all their efforts on Enedwaith. But if they don't have to focus on Enedwaith, if they don't go to war or they ally, they will spur forth into your lands, and you need to deal with them. And perhaps the best way of dealing with Dunland early is to take Tharbad. Take northern Tharbad. Don't worry about southern Tharbad, just take northern Tharbad. And then the next river crossing is right at the end of the Gwathlo through Enedwaith's land, so they won't go there. And then the other river crossing is to head all the way along here to go through that one, and then it's up here where you can also have a castle just here waiting for them. So you can completely block the two river entrances, and that essentially deads Dunland. They just stop dead. They won't cross the river. You constantly beat them at the ford, and you can beat them on the bridge between the two Tharbads, and you can keep them at bay that way. So if Dunland are a threat, cripple their mobility across the river, and then they won't bother, because the town of Ost in Ethil, which is there I believe, stops them from crossing the river too near to Imladris' lands. So they don't tend to go through that region because they don't want to risk going to war with Imladris. So they often just leave you alone and they focus going south. And it might mean that you bring Rohan's demise a little earlier, but you can then go and save them later. Who cares about them? Now, in terms of allies, you're allied to almost all the good factions who inhabit Eriador. The Breland, certainly allied to the Breland. You're also allied to the realm of Imladris, but who start in the Vale of Imladris. But you also start on good terms with the realm of Linden and the dwarves of Ered Luin, so a chance for an alliance with them is very, very easy. However, due to the nature of the AI in Med 2, you can't really ever tell them to attack anyone, so you might be being beaten to a pulp, holding on by the skin of your teeth in Amun Sul, winning heroic victory after heroic victory, and praying that the dwarves come to your aid, sending diplomats, sending them money, gifting them regions, and really they will never attack Angmar. You have to wait and let them do it on their own. So the campaign of the Northern Dúnedain is very much about survival until other forces arrive. And survival is done easiest. Amun Sul is easy to hold, but bear in mind they don't need siege equipment, so they can attack it the turn they siege it. But the battle map for Amun Sul is quite easy to defend. Fornos being a huge castle, I think it's a fortress, which is the penultimate level. Because it's so big, it's very easy to defend. You also get a pretty sturdy garrison there, I'm fairly certain. I can't recall actually. No, scratch that. I can't remember if we took garrisons away for the Northern Dúnedain. We wanted their campaign to be hard. So you get a garrison in Fenestrun, and certainly I'm unsure about Fornost and Númenor. So if you do get a garrison there, then yay! And if you don't get a garrison there, then good luck, friends. So Fornost is easy to hold, Aminsul is easy to hold, but really you want to push north and take Angmar. But as I've mentioned, there's only villages between you and Angmar, and they're very hard to hold. So it's a very strategic campaign. You've really got to think about every decision before you make it. In terms of scripts that affect the Northern Dúnedain, the major one is their Beacon of Hope recruitment system, which we'll talk about in a bit. But they also get the Aragorn
Your
script.
orders, my lord.
Quite simply, it's a small little RPG. Every now and then it will tell you to send Aragorn to certain regions. You send him there, you wait for a few turns, you'll get the next message and you send him on. The eventual goal of the script is to send Aragorn down and call upon the oath of the Oathbreakers, the King of the Dead. And he will indeed do that. Once you get the King of the Dead, he'll spawn by your side with an army of invincible, write that down, invincible army of the dead. They have something like 50 hit points, they have like 30 armor, that's the only way we can make them unkillable, and they are unkillable. They can take on, one unit of them could take down 2,000 of any enemy's best units. They're just incredible. But they will only fight in two battles. It might be 3, but do plan for 2. Because if it is not 3, then you'll be sorely, you'll be saddened. But they can only fight in 2 battles, and then their oath is fulfilled and they go. So you really have to choose your battles wisely. Personally, in the 2 Northern Dúnedain, I'm going to call them Northern throughout because that's the nickname I give them. It's just a merging, obviously, of Northern and Dúnedain. So the Northern, whenever I've played as the Northern and I've got the Army of the Dead, I've sent one battle north and I've claimed Carn Dum. I've completely destroyed it, destroyed every building. I've not managed to hold it because my line was somewhere around here. I was, I think, in the village of Athelin, which is around here somewhere. But I took it with the Army of the Dead and I immediately left, destroyed every building and then sold it back to them, I think. And then I headed south and annoyed Misty Mountains by taking Goblin Town in exactly the same method. So really pick the battles with the Army of the Dead wisely, because they will only fight for you 2 times. And the second thing is the Beacon of Hope recruitment system. I spoke about this a lot in the 2 overview videos that I already did, but you can't not mention it in the Northern Dúnedain video. And that is simply that all of your Dúnedain units, that's any unit with Dúnedain in the name or Cardolan in the name, so Dúnedain Rangers, Cardolan Riders, Cardolan, basically anything that comes from the Dúnedain encampment. In fact, anything that comes from the Dúnedain encampment. They can only be trained in the old borders of Arnor, so in a region which used to be in Arnor. Check out a map if you don't know where Arnor goes, but essentially it's from the castle of Bari Donionac there, and it heads all the way south to the river Gwathlo, the Grey Flood River. And any units there, you can only train here. They can be retrained outside of your lands, but they can't be trained outside of your lands. And outside of your lands, you only get 4 types of unit. I'll show you those in the second half of the video when we look at the battle. You only get 4 units, 2 militia, 1 spear, 1 archer, and 2 medium tier militia, 1 archer and 1 cavalry. And those are the only units that you get outside of your lands, except for the Beacon of Hope system. And that is simply that any human faction, be they technically allied or an enemy of the Northern Dúnedain, they will, in their lands, you can train some of their units. So in Rohan's land, you can train Rohirrim. In Anduin's land, you can train Anduin. In Enderwaith and Dundon, you can train Wildman. If you make it all the way to Harad, you can train Haradrim. If you make it all the way to Khand, you can train Khandish units. We've made it so that any humans will fight under Aragorn, and that is either through subjection or through truce. So, because he is the hope for the defeat of Sauron on Inni Esteladin, Uchebini Stelanim, then he can summon all the forces of good to take down Sauron. And that is indeed one of your objectives. You have to defeat Isengard, Angmar, and Mordor. You don't have to worry with the Misty Mountains, but essentially you've got to clear out, first of all, your initial enemy so that your lands are safe. And then you've got to take out the 2 major threats to Middle-earth, because you are the saviours of Middle-earth, with the elves sodding off to Aman. And the dwarves not really caring about anyone, as I've explained, as they stay in their mountains. So to do the task, you get to train a lot of units. And it also makes the Northern Dúnedain late game really interesting. In a sense, it is a sort of replacement for Arnor, because you do feel... we get asked all the time, can you be Arnor? No, you cannot rebuild Arnor. It's not lore accurate. We hope to bring in Reunited Kingdom in sometime in the future, but time and team members will tell on that one. So in place of Arnor, you get the recruitment system that you can train units from every human faction, and a few elves as well, but only from Imladris. And that's only really if Imladris falls. If Imladris falls and you reclaim it, you can retrain a few elves there. So that's their Beacon of Hope system. Tips with Northern Dúnedain, as I've already said, are to take the Tharbad if Dunland are being a problem. Just push for it and take it. Any lands that they've still got behind you, you can worry about later. Just push and take it. My advice is to send Halbarad south straight away and immediately attack it, because Dunland will get it in turn 1. so you can't actually make it.
My lord.
But take it as fast as you can. And with Angmar as well, try and attack them as fast as possible. Cripple their economy, because they've got better economy than you, they've got cheaper units than you, and they will throw everything they've got at you. So you want to really cripple those two enemies as fast as you can, and that's the best route to victory. A side note on the difficulty, Northern Dúnedain is probably the hardest human faction to play as, so they're not for the faint-hearted. You will be attacked a lot, you will have to grind your way to victory, but not in the sense that you're attacking stack after stack, but just in the sense that you'll be outnumbered a lot. So you have to rely on your very heavy military, which I will talk about in the second half of the video. Dúnedain's only saving grace is that you get phenomenal units. Now, I've already mentioned the construction in that you aren't restricted to upgrade. Amun-Sul does not upgrade. Sometimes we get asked why Amun-Sul can't upgrade, and it always baffles me. But you can't upgrade Amun-Sul. There's no one's done a custom settlement of Amun-Sul rebuilt, so you can't upgrade it. But in a normal town or a normal castle, you can get all 3 levels and all 5 levels. You also get quite a few guilds. You get the Warriors Guild, which most people get, Sword Masters, which increases your swords, and then just experience bonuses in the Royal Sword Masters and Hall of the Faithful, a nod to the men that came in the ships with Elendil, the faithful of the Valar, who you are descendants of. You also get the Archers Guild, which, as you would expect, just improves your archers' experience. And you get Horse Breeders Guild, because as you'll see from the military side of Northern Dúnedain, you get a lot of cavalry. The Northern Dúnedain also have quite a unique UI. Some of their buildings, once you get into the later game, use Gondorian looks to show that you're kind of rebuilding Arnor. But in the earlier game, you're a sort of a wild man. You're like an elite wild man faction, and you have to rely on that a lot. Ambushes and sneak and skirmishes are your friends. So that's the Northern Dúnedain on the campaign map. That's what I suggest you do with them here. And now we can head to the battle map, and we can take a look at their units in action. Disclaimer, if you're playing 0.5, your units will not sound like they're about to sound. They will sound very different. If you're playing 0.51, then these are the voices that we've given you. If you're playing 0.5, they will not sound like this. So don't ask like, oh, why don't my Dúnedain say things that your Dúnedain say? And it's because this is for the next bit. This was Hummingbird delved into the files of one of the beloved Lord of the Rings game and coughed up these phenomenal voices. And the Dúnedain they work for splendidly. So Dúnedain, all the units that we have here are your main units. I've not got any of their Beacon of Hope units. They also get Lumbermen and Woodland Archers, but they're more breeze units, to be honest, that Dúnedain can actually just train. And obviously there are other units that they get that I've not gone into. As you can see from the brief look at the screen here, they are a reasonably cavalry-orientated faction with a heavy focus on archers, who are always in the second line, and you can see that down there. Your bodyguard unit to begin the talks are the Dúnedain bodyguard.
Keep out of sight.
And there they are.
Keep together.
That's the voices you won't have.
Ready yourselves. Ready yourselves.
They have Númenorian steel bows. Northern Dúnedain, brief overview of their militia, of their army. You're an archer faction. You're an ambush archer faction with a focus on late game superiority. So in the early game, your units are very strong but very rare. You get slow replenishment. They're restricted by region recruitment restrictions. And they're they're not expensive. That's the flip side. Because the Northern Dúnedain are a faction who are meant to live off the land, they're meant to roam from place to place, a lot of your units have very cheap upkeep. The only exception are the militia units, who have the upkeep doesn't show here, but the militia units have very high upkeep, whereas your normal units have very low upkeep. So your focus really is on small, powerful armies. You're not a faction of hordes, and you're not a faction of just generally large choice. But if you can, you're all about ambush and archers. That's your main theme. So, to begin, the first units that you will likely play with are the 3 Cardlin units in your homeland, who will do on the left, and the militia units, who will do on the right. Militia units are exactly what they say on the tin. They are militia. Militia! Militia! As they are saying to you in a rather monotone, militia! They are just about as good as Gondor's militia, to be honest. So as militia go, they're quite good, but as units go, they're reasonably poor. You can't rely on them. They're average across the board. They aren't the best units in the game, but they are solid militia, much better than orcs and wildmen. But your first main units that you're going to rely on are the units of Cardlin, these guys.
Be alert. Watch this area.
Cardlin Riders,
Be alert.
Cardlin Archers, and Cardlin Sentinels. The Sentinels have a reasonably fast speed. We made them run quite quickly, so they're a quite fast infantry unit. These guys, let me just group all of these, sorry, I like it to show what I've seen. The Cardlin Sentinels are a solid first game unit. You have to bear in mind that the stats that you're looking at the moment are more reminiscent of a pre-barracks event, but medium tier unit. But these are your first available guys. These are the first units you're going to be using. And they are already with a 13 armor. That's some post-barracks events units have that sort of strength. And in comparison to the Wildmen's best unit normally has a defense around 16 to 18. So you're already only 5 away with your starting unit. So it shows you how elite your forces are. So the Sentinels are quite good with their attack. They've got a high attack, and with the increased speed that they've got, they're a strike infantry. You run them in, you attack, you run them out. You've also got Cardinal Archers. They're reasonable archers. There's not really much you can say about them. They can hide anywhere like a lot of the Dúnedain units can. You can use stakes. They've got a reasonable morale of average, but they've only got a 4 missile attack, which isn't that good when you consider that, for example, your Rangers have 6. But 6 in the stat system that we use, a missile attack of 6 is very, very good. I think the best missile attack in the game is 11. A non-archer unit has 11, and that's the Elves' best archer unit. So it shows you kind of what you're working with. So 4 and 6 aren't actually that bad. An archer of 1 and 2 are really bad, so it does work how you'd expect. The Cardinal Riders are a reasonably poor cavalry unit. They don't have a secondary attack, so that attack is all they're working with. They aren't really charge, and they aren't prolonged melee. They are all about hitting the back of an enemy to make them rout, and then chasing down the routing units. That's all you're going to use these guys for. They're not very good in prolonged melee, and they've not got a very strong charge, so you can't rely on that. Now, before the barracks event, but second tier to these guys are the Dúnedain Rangers and Dúnedain Wardens, who will line up behind. Oh, and the Dúnedain Scouts, sorry, and yes, that is it. So these are available before the barracks event as well, but they are a tier above the Cardolan. Cardolan units are only available in Old Cardolan, not even all of Arnor. So these guys are reasonably rare, because they're only available in the southwest corner of Arnor. But these guys are available in all of Arnor. There's the Dúnedain Wardens, a solid spear unit. The Dúnedain Rangers. Come together, Dúnedain. And the Dúnedain Scouts. The Scouts obviously just being a mounted archer unit. Dúnedain Rangers are one of the best rangers in the game. These are the rangers that almost all other rangers are based on, so they were the first of their kind. Very high accuracy, long range, a lot of missiles, good morale, good attack if the battle comes to it, but they haven't got a very good armour, and that's the only thing that really lets them down. They are an ambush unit, and they are a skirmish unit, so don't try and send them into battle unless it's to rout an enemy or you're flanking or something like that, because otherwise they will die. The Dúnedain Wardens are your main battle line unit. These are your bread and butter unit. They are a spear unit, as you can see. They can go into spear wall, and they've got solid stats. 16 defense already for essentially your first tier of unit. A 7 attack, which for a spear unit is very, very good. And they've got good morale and good morale response, which is also very good. Morale is really the battle winner. It's the unknown and unsung hero of battles. So a high morale can make a weak unit 10 times stronger than an elite unit with poor morale. Because charges and the way the battle ebbs and flows is very, very important. So they've got a good morale and solid defense. They can really hold the line for a long time. And their spears look pretty cool as well, which is also a nice little addition. And then finally you've got the Dúnedain Scouts, just mounted cavalry archers. Again, they've got a reasonable missile attack. Sorry, not poor. It's very average. But they are mounted, so they've got the mobility. They've got the running around. They've not got very good morale. Their accuracy is quite good for cavalry, which is reasonably rare. But they've only got a very poor range, but they've got quite a lot of arrows, so you want to keep these guys running around and just peppering the enemy with arrows, much like if you ever played old Rome Total War and you played as Parthia, and you played with the Parthians, and you would pepper the Romans with arrows till they were to fall beneath your hooves. So that's the idea with them. The Grey Company, who I've added, are Aragorn's unique bodyguards, so just take a quick look at them. They look like heavily mounted Dúnedain on horses. They look really cool. They are only the bodyguard of Aragorn, so that's the only time you'll ever see them. They're Dúnedain Scouts, but they're better than Dúnedain Scouts, and they're better in prolonged melee. But you'll only see them with Aragorn, as I say, so we can take them out and move them over there. Bodyguards, let's group the bodyguards up over in the corner. Alright, so now we come to after the barracks event. The first things you're going to get are the Dúnedain Wardens, the Dúnedain Cavalry, and they're going to be on the left. Not the Dúnedain Wardens, sorry. The Dúnedain Blade Masters. Dúnedain Cavalry, and they're going to be this tier. And you're also going to get in outside of your homeland regions the second tier of militia units. So your first tier of militia is a spear unit and an archer unit, and then after the barracks event you get mounted captains and militia captains. And the first thing you will obviously notice when you look at these guys is that they are old Arnorian style units. And that is intended because Arnor is taken out, but these units are after the barracks event, likely when you've cleared out Angmar and you're rebuilding your lands, so you've rebuilt your armor to show your heritage. All of these units get an upgraded look when they upgrade, but I've not got that here. There's always nice to have a surprise. The mounted captains are just that. They're just a solid cavalry unit. They're not as good as the Dúnedain cavalry, as we'll see in a second, but they are a solid cavalry unit. They've got a nice charge of 9, a reasonable defense. They can stay in the battle, but again, they don't have a secondary attack. So they continue with their spears and they continue with the 5, but they are good against mounts. So they're an all-round cavalry unit, good against other cavalry and with a nice charge, but they're not very good in prolonged melee. So they're a charge in, run away, charge again unit. The militia captains are a solid arch unit, showing again the Dúnedain's affinity for bows. They're a reasonably good archer unit. Obviously, they're only slightly better than the Cardlands, not as good as your rangers, but they've got a good defense, which is rare for units at this level, and an average attack as well. So if the enemy does break through and hits them, then they can survive for quite some time. They've got quite good accuracy as well for a unit of this tier, with a range of 190, which is not too shabby. But the units that you're going to be getting in the post-barracks event in your homeland are very, very good. The Dúnedain Blade Masters. We Dúnedain will fight for you. These guys are incredible. They're the shock troops of your army. A 14 attack. That is just words. Is my description of that attack. Words. It's incredibly strong. They've got a very good defense of 16. They could have a better defense for the tier that they are, but because they're an ambush and attack faction, they're not a stay in battle faction. That aspect of this faction is reserved for the 3 knight units, who I'll display in a second. So these guys are your strike infantry. You charge them in, you break an enemy, you charge the next enemy, or you charge the enemy line to break it in half and then you pull them out again. If they stay in battle, they'll take a lot of hits and they'll take a lot of casualties, but if you let them get the first hit off, they'll do incredibly well, especially with their 8 charge bonus as well. That's just formidable. And backing them up with the strike nature are the Dúnedain cavalry, who again are heavy hitters. 22 defense, which is very good for a unit of this tier. A charge bonus of 12, again very good for cavalry. And their initial attack of 7, which is nice, but they actually get a secondary attack. A higher secondary attack, meaning that these guys can last in battle a lot longer than most of the other cavalry that precede them. So once these guys have charged in, you can leave them there for a bit and they will do damage to your enemy. But as with most cavalry, the idea of them is to charge in, run, charge in again. The Tharbad Royal Guard, who I added, are the ones that are only available in Tharbad, just to give you another look at what they look like. The Tharbad Royal Guard come in before the barracks event actually, but they come in at the same tier as your Dúnedain units, but they are unique to the Tharbad regions, so you can only get these guys in 2 regions. They're a solid pike unit. I'm not going to talk too much about them because they're just a unique unit, and again they look like the old Arnor unit. So if you can get those and you need to deal with cavalry, they will deal with them perfectly. They've got a very good defense for a pike unit, so they can hold out for a long time. And if you saw the trick in the Dol Amroth campaign of lining your pike units up in 2 banks immediately on top of each other, you have to pretend the Dúnedain Rangers are pikemen, that will create an impenetrable wall that your enemy won't be able to break from the front. So if you can get the pikemen, I certainly would recommend it because they can hold checkpoints and choke points better than any other unit, especially when they're grouped up like that. But now we come to the 3 best units the Northern Dúnedain can train. These are your uber elites. These are only available in Arthedain, apart from the Men-at-Arms, sorry. The Men-at-Arms are your post-barracks event unit elite, and the 2 Arthedain units are only available in Arthedain and are even better. So the Men-at-Arms are available in all the Dúnedain regions. They are heavy knights, as you can see. They shout about the 7 stars, which is quite nice. They've got a solid defense again of 22, but they've got quite a nice attack. These are all about staying power. These are your battle line. These are your late game battle lines. So you've got your spear units to hold the line, and then you send these guys in and you can fire and forget. You can tell them to go somewhere, go away, come back to find that 10 of these have died and 100 of your enemy have died. That's the kind of nature of these guys. So the 22 attack is very good. They've also got a good morale, which is, again, as I say, the unsung hero. That's very, very strong and very useful. But they are no match for the Arthedain Swordmasters. Now, as I said a moment ago incorrectly, but now correctly, these 2 units are only available in Arthedain. That is a Númenas, Fornost and Barketta. Those are the only regions you can get them. And we'll start with the cavalry. These, after the Swan Knights and the Loke something rim of Run, I can never remember their name. The Cataphract unit from Run, and the Swan Knights of Dol Amroth. These are probably up there with the best cavalry in the game. But they are unfortunately very rare, and they are remarkably expensive. And I really mean it. They're so expensive. They can cripple your economy if you train them when you're not ready. However, like heavy cavalry, you'd expect, they've got very good defense, so solid staying power. Their secondary attack is 12, so you really can charge them in and then leave them there and rest assured that they will kill a lot of enemies. Their initial charge bonus as well is 14, which is phenomenal. So they are all-round just heavy, absolute monster of a unit, but they are quite slow. They run slowly, and that is something to factor in because other units can get in the way, or the formation might break and they might not be as effective. So you have to micromanage them a bit, unfortunately.
Sharpen your swords.
And the Arthurdine Swordmasters are the ground counterpart. Similar sort of defense, one slightly less, but they've got a solid attack as well. And so much like the Arthurdine Men-at-Arms, who have the 8-4-22, these guys are 11-4-29. They're just Arthurdine Swordmasters, Arthurdine Men-at-Arms, but just better all round. So again, like the Men-at-Arms, you can fire and forget with them. Charge them into the rear of an enemy or the flank of an enemy, or push them through your defensive line, and you can leave them there knowing that they will do a lot of damage. Alright, and that is the roster. We'll do a mock battle against Angmar, as I've done in all the other videos. So we'll line up every infantry unit that we have got, and we'll put them at the front. And we'll just let Angmar come at us. We've got quite a lot of archers, as I've mentioned, so we can expect the enemy to run at us to try and stop our archers, peppering them from afar. Make sure no one's running away. And we'll put our 2 best cavalry on that side, and our lower tier on that side. And away we go. Oh, Angmar's over on the left. Misjudged that. They've got some snow trolls, got some normal trolls, and then they've just got a spattering of all their units, which you'll see in greater detail in the Angmar overview video, obviously, which may come a lot later, because I've never, ever played as an Orc faction. I've never even played as an evil faction, unless you count Enedwaith as evil. I'm afraid I'm good through and through, but I do like the intricate mechanics of Enedwaith. I think they're quite fun. Oh, there's some wargs bringing up the rear there. They are moving in slowly. Our archers are beginning to fire. There's our militia captains. Dúnedain Rangers, Dúnedain Bodyguards, Cardlin Archers, and local archers all at the end, just peppering our enemy. Let's turn those all off. There we are. Speed it up a bit so we get the combat into straight away. We wait until our defensive line has to attack the enemy. The snow trolls are going to be a bit of a pain. Let's charge them before we have to worry about it. The mounted captains aren't going to do very much at all. Hit the Warg Riders before they can hit us. Oh, those trolls burning through there. As I mentioned in the Mordor camp, in the Gondor video, trolls are considered infantry. So even though your gut wants to tell you that pikemen and spearmen are going to be good against them, they're not. Pikemen and spearmen get no advantage against trolls at all. The best thing to take down trolls... Oh, I've wasted the Arthurdine there. The best thing to take down trolls are javelin and archers, because trolls don't have any shields, so they don't get a shield bonus. So archers are particularly effective against them. Also, armor-piercing mainline units, so with no spear or shield, just an armor-piercing unit is also very effective against trolls, because they obviously ignore half the troll's armor when they're calculating the damage. But as you can see, the trolls run rampant through our lines, but the Blade Masters should absolutely destroy them. That's what we can hope for. We've got some Scourge Raiders attacking us here. Our Dúnedain Wardens aren't really engaged yet. The Pikemen are pushing forward, which is very rare. They're getting flanked, which is not very good. The Arthurdane Swordmasters, they want battle. They can taste it. They're ready for it. The Men-at-Arms haven't even been tested. You can charge in and help our weak cavalry, who have more than likely been absolutely annihilated. Yeah, the Trolls have done a right number on the militia captains. I think, in fact, they are all dead. And the Cardlin Riders have only got 11 left. They're fighting to the death. So it's showing you that against the Angmar's elites, which we're up against here, your early game cavalry really can't hold up. But the Arthurdane Men-at-Arms are now moving in, and they'll deal with that. There's all our archers still firing the enemy because they've yet to engage. And this is very much how you would play a Northern Dúnedain campaign. Your archers are your victory tool. You need to keep them alive, and you need to make them effective. Obviously, I'm not really controlling this battle. I'm just showing you how it looks. But you really need to keep them keep them firing until they've run out of arrows, because they're your best possible unit. They're your best route to victory. Sorry. The Royal Guard are giving the Marauders a run for their money, but Marauders are armor piercing and good against cavalry. So, oh, are they good against cavalry? Oh, no, they're not, which is useful. But they are effective against armor, so they're ignoring half of the Arthedain's very high armor. So that battle, unfortunately, is probably not going to go our way. And these guys are so slow that it takes a long time to run them away and charge them in again. Our Dúnedain cavalry have been just all but destroyed. There's only 9 of those left. Sentinels holding out against the Guardians of Khandun, but they won't be able to hold out for long. They're not designed for that sort of combat. We'll do one last sweep and then that'll be it. So that has been the video of the Northern Dúnedain. I hope it's been reasonably interesting, giving you some tips, giving you some interesting ideas of playing as them. The main reason of these videos is just to show you what playing as them looks like, what you might expect to see, what you might play with, what units you'll get and how to use them. And so hopefully it's given you an idea of that. Oh, those Royal Guard will tear through the scouts.
Our foolish general has thrown his life away.
Although our general's died.
Victory with it.
That's never good. But anyway, so that's the end of the Northern Dúnedain video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been enjoyable and I hope it's been informative. The next video up, I'm uncertain where we'll go with the next one, as that concludes the Descendants of Númenor. So, until I pop up the next one, do enjoy playing DAC. As usual, head over to Total War Centre if you have any issues or questions, and we'll all be there to answer them. But for now, Navar Naden Pedimad, and farewell.